One guy's seen it, the other guy hasn't. First guy's gonna tell the second guy all about it while they both get drunk.
All right, welcome to another episode of One Guy's Seen It, the only podcast where one guy has seen the movie, the other guy has not seen the movie, and the first guy is going to try to convince the second guy to see the movie. And if he succeeds, they'll take a break, watch the movie, come back, nerd out about the movie, and decide how many beers you need to enjoy the movie, all while getting progressively more inebriated, because that is what they choose to do with their sentience. But without any further ado, or rigmarole, or hoopla, or ballyhoo, let's get into it. Sumner, give me the skinny.
Hey, how you doing?
That was a skinny, my friend.
Yeah, well, I never know what you mean by skinny.
The skinny, the proverbial metaphorical skinny.
Like,
you know?
what's going on? What I'm up to?
Yeah, what's the news? You know, it is kind of a weird expression. Like, I wonder what the origin of that. Like, is it like a Wild West thing? Like, hey, Billy Joe, give me the skinny. Like, tell me what's keeping you thin, or like, what do you think the origin is?
It's just a way of saying don't bore me. Just give me the, the crucial details.
Yeah, you know what? You're right. Yeah, crucial details. Give me the lean meat, the lean brisket.
Well, I didn't do any of that. I did the exact opposite.
That's all right, man. I'll take any kind of skinny you want to offer. How's it going over there in Japan land?
It's good. It's more of the same. It's just raining like crazy. It's finally starting to cool down now, so it's getting down into like the 60s and 50s.
Ooh.
I saw that it's kind of cooling down over there too. Like it's getting out of the hundreds at least.
Yeah, you know, yesterday was actually pretty nice. We're still going like every other day. It's like 1,000 degrees, and then the next day it feels livable.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it feels way better over there. We actually had like a 2-hour rainstorm the other day that ended our billion-year drought, which was super nice.
Nice, that's cool.
And of course, I had just washed my fucking car, so that's just story of my life.
Classic scenario.
Yeah, dude. Oh, speaking of, we're
good
watching a
weather,
movie today.
though.
Today, I am the guy who's seen it. I feel like, and I'm really hoping you haven't seen it because I have no backup.
Yeah.
But I really want to shit on this movie with you. Like, I'm so
Okay.
excited to shit on it.
Okay.
So let's see if you can figure it out. So this is a movie from 2004. Okay. It is a drama sci-fi thriller.
Mm-hmm.
All right. It's directed by Shane Carruth. I don't know exactly how to pronounce his last name. And it stars Shane Carruth, David Sullivan, and Casey Gooden. Names ring any bells at all?
No, none of those. None of those names.
Okay. So here's the plot. Let's see if this gets you any closer. Here's the plot.
Okay.
4 friends / fledgling entrepreneurs, knowing that there's something bigger and more innovative than the different error checking devices that they've built, wrestle over their new invention.
I have no clue.
Anything?
No.
No clue?
Yeah. What is?
All right,
what
so
is the
maybe I can
film?
give you some trivia, and that might help, because I remember there was some buzz about it. I mean, obviously we were kids when it came out, but I remember, just because I loved movies like this, there was some buzz about it, and I remember watching it like maybe my freshman year of college, and just I have no idea what the fuck happened, so I'm excited to watch it again.
Yeah.
So here's a little trivia. So the budget for the entire film was roughly $7,000, and most of that money was spent on film stock, which is awesome.
I think I know what this is now.
Really?
Yeah. Is it Primer?
Yes. Have you seen it?
No.
Yes. Oh, thank God. Okay. I'm so excited. Well, I'm excited to reevaluate how I feel about this movie, because I know there was people had a lot of opinions about it. A lot of people thought it was like the greatest sci-fi movie of all time, and a lot of people were like, this is total dog shit.
Yeah.
And I don't remember how I felt about it, so I want to experience it again with you and tear it apart.
Oh yeah, when you said the 7,000 thing, I was like, wow, I've heard of a movie that costs like roughly that amount, and I was like, it's either Cube or Primer. It was one of those two.
Nice. And this is kind of interesting too. So Rian Johnson, who directed Looper, apparently in the director's commentary for Looper, said that not only is Primer the best time travel movie ever made, but when he sent the script for Looper to his friend Shane Carruth, Carruth told him that all of his time travel writing was wrong in Looper, which is awesome.
Yeah,
because I love Looper.
Oh, I did too. Yeah, I was a big fan of it when it came out. I don't know if it holds up now, if I went back and rewatched it, but when it came out, I loved it.
Yeah, I can't even when I think about the movie, just all I can think about is Joseph Gordon-Levitt slightly looking like Bruce Willis, and it still freaks me out.
Yeah, that was one of the big things at the time. It's funny too, because Rian Johnson kind of fell from grace, because he was like an indie darling for a bit, and he did Brick, which is a movie that I really loved. Have you ever seen it with Joseph Gordon-Levitt?
Brick? I don't think so.
He's like a detective, but like the gimmick is like he's a senior in high school and he's trying to solve the murder of his like ex-girlfriend or something like that.
Oh wow.
And he like uncovers like a whole underground network of kids that go to his school. It's goofy, but it's a fun indie movie.
You said he was in high school at the time?
Well, it takes place in like a high school.
Got it. Okay.
But and then he did Looper, and then he did like Brothers Bloom or whatever, and was like, I was a big fan of his. And then he did The Last Jedi, and just got universally shit on for that.
Oh fuck! I didn't know he did Last Jedi.
Yeah, that was like his like tank downwards.
Damn.
Yeah. Anyway,
Looper's still a banger. No, that's okay. That's okay. I'll give you a few more trivia before we jump into it that I don't think's really gonna spoil anything. So, okay, so here's something. Shane Carruth, I think it's Carruth, took up the job of writing, producing, directing, editing, and scoring the movie with no prior experience in any of these fields.
Oh my God.
And it took him 3 years to make the movie, writing the screenplay over a period of a year, and working on an independent movie as a microphone operator to get the hang of filming techniques.
Oh shit.
Shooting the movie only took a month, but the film spent nearly 2 years in post-production due to horrible editing problems. And during that period, he claims to have quit working on the movie 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, I don't blame him. It's got to be such a stressful doing all the jobs simultaneously. Can't imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it's and the fact that it was in any way even moderately successful, I mean, kudos, regardless of however we feel about it by the end of this.
Yeah, I'm excited. I've heard a lot about it, and I've heard it's like, I think one of the most famous things about it is like it's really, really complicated. Like it's real, like the things that they're explaining, but I don't have any frame of reference if it is or not.
Yeah, and when I think back about it, I think the reason I can't remember anything is, freshman year of college, I was living in a haze of green 95% of the time, and if this was in any way complicated, I imagine I finished it and was like, well, gonna have to watch that again, and then just never got around to it.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Oh, this is kind of interesting. In order to cut costs, Shane did mostly single takes of shots and filmed on 16mm stock, which was then transferred to mini digital video film, which he could edit on his PC, which caused some unforeseen problems. The editing software couldn't handle the sound properly, and 2 months of editing were needed just to sync the audio to the video. What a nightmare.
God, that sounds awful. I think we really take for granted how wonderful of an innovation digital filmmaking is.
Yeah, no shit. And keep in mind, this was in 2004, so I feel like there were other options for this guy. Like, as limited as they may have been.
I think sophisticated digital technology was like a couple years off. I mean, especially for like indie filmmakers. I don't think it was up to par, like to get like high quality stuff. But
yeah, I guess that makes sense.
But yeah, that's Yeah, I don't even know when that transition would have happened, but they're still like stuck in the 90s, like having to deal with all those issues.
Yeah, weird middle ground for filmmaking. Like the same piece of trivia says the biggest problem was the relative lack of footage, which made it really difficult to work around continuity errors and technical problems, which is no big deal with a complicated movie about time travel. Like, who cares about continuity?
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how this plays out, because it sounds like a production nightmare.
I'm hyped. Okay, so we're what, like 20 minutes into this? What's up?
I was gonna ask. We forgot to ask. What are you drinking over there?
Oh, nice. Yeah, so I'm drinking a Monster Energy, and I'm about to pop open, mainly because it's all we've got, like a really cheap, shitty bottle of Chardonnay when we watch this thing.
Nice. I'm in a similar. I'm drinking some wine that we got from a winery recently.
Nice. From a real wine from a real winery?
Yeah, it's a Japanese winery that we went on a tour of, and it's whatever their wild grape thing is here. But they're really good, really good wine. So
yummy. Wait, what type of wine are you drinking?
White. It is a nice white wild grape.
Just a white wild grape.
I want to say Sauvignon Blanc, but it's sweeter than that, so I don't know. I just knew that it had alcohol in it, just so I started drinking it.
Well, I'm pretty sure that I've had this brand from H-E-B before, and that it tastes like pure gasoline. So I'm not looking forward to it, but it will do the job.
Yeah, as long as it gets us through primer, I guess.
Fuck yes. Hey, thank you for watching this movie with me. I'm so ready to suffer and no longer be the only guy that's seen it.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. This one's been on my list for a long time. I've never gotten around to it.
Sweet. Okay, we are going to take a break. We're going to watch this movie. We're going to come back. We're going to bullshit about this movie. You are listening to One Guy's Seen It. And remember, when you hear that banger of a trumpet hook, spoilers are on the way. Pause the video if you want to go watch it, come back, finish the episode. I've been thinking about this. Maybe we should be releasing these as part 1s and part 2s. But, I mean...
We give the right amount of
work.
Yeah, I think they work as one cohesive whole.
Yeah. It's like, if somebody's paying attention, they would know to pause it and come back. But then at the same time... Like, if a lot of people are putting on podcasts to just be in the background, you know what? No. You know what? We say there's going to be spoilers. We have the trumpet sound. We're going to stick. We're going to stick to our method.
Do you respect the hypothetical intelligence of our audience?
I do. Maybe that is my biggest mistake.
Yeah. And they probably, if they have seen it, they just skip over the part where we're just bullshitting for half an hour.
Right. I respect our audience enough to respect our audience enough to expect that they will respect the trumpet.
Respect the trumpet. I want a t-shirt.
Hashtag respect the trumpet.
If we ever get to a place where merch is like even like a potential idea, I want to just respect the trumpet with a little trumpet playing underneath it.
That's so good. So for anybody listening, you've just heard the first inside joke of this podcast that's going to become merch. This is like a dream come true. This is all I've ever wanted, is to have a little inside joke that becomes merch. That's going to be magical.
Yeah, that's my big money-making scheme, is inside joke merch.
Yes. Okay, here comes that trumpet sound. We'll be back.
I'm recording now.
All right, we are back with One Guy's Seen It. Sumner, give me the skinny.
Well, I've had a lot of interesting emotions with this movie. I wouldn't even call them emotions, really. They're I got like 15 minutes into this movie and was trying to, wrap my head around what was going on and then like 10 more minutes passed and I was just like, you know what? I'm not like a software engineer, so I'm just going to start drinking heavily.
Right.
And just like try and figure out what's going on that way. But yeah, I mean, there are things well, what did you think about it going back and watching it a second time?
So it became very clear to me on this watch through that I think on my initial viewing of this movie, we're talking upwards of 10 years ago, I don't think I finished it. I think I watched half the movie, and I don't know if I got distracted by something else. I mean, I know I was in school at the time, but I only remembered the first half of the movie. Everything else after that was completely new to me. And which was exciting because, so I guess we should retitle this episode, One Guy's Half Seen It.
One guy has kind of seen it.
One guy has vaguely seen it in another timeline. Maybe it was his double that saw it. Who knows?
Yeah, right. I was gonna. You can turn it like into a ska version. One guy's kind of seen it.
Yeah. Okay, so you asked like sort of my overall thoughts rewatching it, right? So I will agree with you that I think a decision that I already knew that I needed to make early on was to not get too caught up in technical shit. I threw on subtitles, which I don't think I had the first time around, and that helped a lot.
Yeah.
It helped a lot because
we did at the very end, or like halfway through it, I think, which I think it would have helped more in the first like 20 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, you watched it with Andy?
Yeah, she's here too.
That's awesome. Hi, Andy. I don't know if she can. Is she in another room now?
Jeff says hi. She waves.
Yay. Yeah. So, okay. So overall thoughts for me. I'm glad that I sort of knew going in that if I could just sort of remove myself from first. So here's, I will give these guys credit, right? These actors, if I remember correctly, if I hop back over to the trivia, I believe, so over 100 people auditioned for the parts of Abe and Aaron. David Sullivan was cast as Abe without any professional acting experience. And I don't think that Shane Carruth, who played Aaron, who played the kind of main guy, I don't think he had any acting experience. So I really tried.
I could kind of tell.
You could tell, right? And now here's where I'm going to give them credit. Is it's in the first half of the movie, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was like, oh my god, like they're like you could convince yourself that okay, they're engineers, they're dorks, they're running through all this jargon, they're trying to solve these problems. I could let the poor acting go, and then by about halfway through, you could tell they sort of hit a stride or a rhythm. Like halfway through the movie, they either got more comfortable with each other behind the camera, or what. But there was like a visible shift for me where they became a lot more believable.
Yeah, I think it's something to do with they had those really long, drawn-out monologues where they had to explain things, and I think it just, they became like a unit because they didn't have those other two guys, which those two guys at the beginning are way worse actors like the other two. Oh, yeah,
a huge detriment.
But I mean, like, for the type of movie that it is and the budget that, it's forgivable, and I think a lot of that gets saved by the editing. I was really, like, it sounds weird, but the way that they cut around certain things, like, it made me pay less attention to how, like, wooden the acting was, and, like, the pacing and the editing was really good. I think that was one of the things that saved it for me from turning into, like B movie acting.
No, I agree 100%, and I think it's impressive too when I don't even know if we talked about this in the beginning, was that everything was pretty much one take, like and I think a lot of the audio, you could tell a lot of it was dubbed, but I think that in the commentary they talk about that pretty much every scene was a first take and audio dubbed later. I think the only shot that it said was redone was there's a part later in the movie where Aaron like opens the door to find failsafe A, which was like the failsafe box that Abe had created, and they reshot that scene because someone had left a Sprite can on top of the box in the initial scene. But supposedly that's the only shot that they did more than once, which I just cannot wrap my mind around.
Yeah, I mean, especially because those monologues are really in depth and like they require a lot of focus, I feel like.
Yeah,
You know,
and
'cause
knowing
they weren't easy.
No, they weren't. And I think knowing this kind of trivia about all this stuff going in made me appreciate the shots more. Like knowing this was the one take of this, and like I can let go of the poor acting or whatever early on in the movie, just knowing that these guys were just fucking running and gunning a pretty ambitious idea, and the fact that it came together in even any some kind of somewhat coherent anything is impressive.
Yeah.
But also, also, like, what the fucking fuck? Like,
yeah. I was trying to write down notes vigorously just so I had something to talk about later, and I gave up like midway through. I was like, there's no way. I just wrote down some of the technical jargon that they were saying, because like you're in that first scene with them, and they're in the garage, and they're talking about something. I'm sure of it. I don't know what it is, but they're very passionately talking about we need to fix these certain things because the quantum physics of, you know, this thing require us to be focused, but the money and and they're in the garage and they're doing their stuff, and then they're around the dinner table and being like, nothing's working. I don't know what to do. And honestly, I couldn't really follow any of it.
So I got to agree with you here. One of the first things that I wrote down was that I really wish it was a little more clear what the early version of the device was doing, right? Because and I'm again, like you said, you didn't turn on subtitles till about halfway through. Watching with,
which was a mistake.
Yeah, watching with subtitles was clutch for the first half of the movie. Because even with subtitles, it's still kind of all over the place science-wise, like what exactly they're building the device to do. And it seems like the initial attempt or the initial application of it was that it was essentially like an anti-gravity machine. Like they were trying to make a machine that was hyper-efficient, whether it was like consuming energy or whatever it was doing. I think all of that is intentionally vague because it's not the point. And I feel like the movie makes it very easy, and especially for first-time viewers, to sort of get lost in all that and be like, okay, I officially don't fucking care anymore. But I kind of remembered enough that going back in, I was like, okay, I don't need to focus a whole lot on the technical aspect of what this machine is intended to do. The point is what it ends up accidentally being capable of, and their realization of that, and what they choose to do with that knowledge, and how they treat the machine, which I think is what's really important.
Yeah, because I was caught up on that early too, because I think I wrote down like something with freon and tubing, like because they were talking about something to do with the fridge. And then, but then, like the revelation comes when they, the machine keeps running and running, and then they unplug the batteries, and it's like it's still going for like, he says like a couple of minutes or something like that. I was like, okay, so it's like a energy source that could potentially not need, like a generator source.
Right. And the way that the closest it ever got to making any kind of sense in my mind was when he sort of starts writing it down. It's like this parabola thing, right? It's like this, it's creating this causal energy loop that sort of, I think, explains what you're talking about, that it sort of becomes like an infinite energy. I mean, it will power down eventually, but for whatever reason, they determined that it is, moving things forward in time at a relative rate that they can measure. It's not exact, but it's enough for them to be able to be like, holy shit, think about what we could do with this. Imagine if we put a person in it. Yeah. And then it, like, oh man, there were... So
his mind turns to mush.
Well, so it's funny. Like, so I kind of did what you did, right? Like, I sort of just wrote down these things that jumped out at me, and it's funny. Like, I remember when they were in the early stages of the machine, and they were first testing it, either with like a plate or whatever that they put in it early on in the garage.
It was like a little egg or something.
It was like an egg of argon that was what ended up growing the fungus that made him realize, like, holy shit, this thing is like traveling through time. But there's this scene where Abe, the blonde guy, right before they power it up, really for the first time, he's like, hold on, Aaron, I just want to make sure everything is set up right. And there's like this really intense piano jingle, And it was the funniest scene in the whole movie to me because like they have this loose theory in their minds of what they think it's about to do, and Abe is like, hold on, let's just make sure everything's connected right. And instead of him actually doing what someone would do in that situation, which would be like checking the cables and like whatever, he's like, hold on, I just want to make sure everything's set up right. And then there's like this cinematic shot of him in like this kind of shadow, and this piano jingle plays, and he's just kind of staring into the distance for a couple seconds. And then he's like, okay, we're ready. Like, he does absolutely nothing to make sure that everything's right. It's like he just needed a second to, like, process what they were about to do, but he didn't say that. He's like, let me make sure everything's hooked up. And then he doesn't do anything. Yeah. Sorry, that's one of like, the first things that jumped out at me. I was like, okay, what the fuck?
No, it's funny, too, because I think I wrote down later in that scene, they like, test it, and then it fucks up or something, and he just looks at it for half a second. He's like, that's destroyed. And then... But they don't open it and they don't look at it or anything. He just assumes it's destroyed after like something went wrong with it.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, I really wish it was a little more clear like what the device was doing. And man, okay, so let's jump around a little bit because I want to see if we can talk through this. One thing I didn't want to do, because I'm pretty sure that 95% of people that watch this movie look up a YouTube explained video, and I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
I want us to try as hard as we can, even with our level of inebriation, to sort of try to figure out what happened.
Oh yeah, I got shit faced. I was like, fuck it, I'm going in deep.
So
just down in a bottle of wine.
Okay,
but
so
yeah, I mean, like I tried to keep a relative picture of what was going on, like, you know, like just the basic facts and trying to piece that together, I guess.
Right, and I feel like the harder you try, the worse of a time you had, and I sort of knew at least that going in, that if I just didn't try, I would probably enjoy the movie more. And but I want to talk this through a little bit. So I'm a little confused as to exactly what went down with what I'm assuming is Abe's ex-girlfriend, the guy with the shotgun at the party, right? Because that's where things...
Yeah, Rachel and... Yeah.
Yeah, it's where things really start to get off the rails, and they start like yelling at each other at that fountain scene where the lighting was absolutely terrible, and the fountain sounds were really loud, and you could like barely understand what they were saying. But what was your understanding of what kind of set it off the rails? Did like Abe heard from somebody that this ex-boyfriend showed up with a shotgun, and like Aaron goes back to try to stop it, and that's what starts to set things off the rails? Like,
because I saw that scene happen, and then he mentions that the shotgun, like he comes to the garage and says, yeah, the guy pulled a shotgun or something crazy like that. And I thought that, I was like, okay, so maybe it happened where the guy came in with a shotgun and like potentially killed someone, and that's why he went back and like fixed it without telling Abe, his buddy. But later they end up talking about it, and they're like, yeah, he's like, he never had the intention of like shooting the gun or anything like that. He just wanted to brandish it and like make a big show, which I thought was interesting because I was assuming that was the reason he went back in the first place to take the shotgun away from him.
Yeah, and I guess the first allusion to Aaron, the main guy, sort of, I guess the first allusion to him developing this affinity for like wanting to give up his life for sort of more control. The first allusion to his emotions getting the best of him, right, is when he talks about when they're hypothetically talking with his wife and Abe in the living room about what they would do, if they could come back with all this money or whatever. And the first thing he says is he would like go punch his boss in the face, right? And that's where things really start to get off the rails early, is just that thought of going back and changing something that really has no impact or isn't going to get them where they want to go, the heights of the possibilities, but they let that human element get in the way, right? He lets emotions start clouding his judgment and his decision making, and that's the first step of it. And then go ahead.
It was funny the way he was talking about that in the scene, like he would actually like be able to punch his boss in the face, because he kept talking about it's like, well, you could do it, and then the double would have to come back and like stop you from doing it. And I was like, if you ever went back and did that, like like you would never even get a chance to be able to do that. Your double would stop you before you even got. It was just a really seemingly ridiculous conversation,
Right? And
about he would just go back with the intention of doing it, but never would be able to do it.
yeah, and I think honestly, what is one of the biggest weaknesses of most time travel stories is this movie still kind of suffers from it, like the causal paradoxes. But I like that they don't hang on any of them, even the little metaphorical situations. They don't like hang on them long enough for it to become an issue if you just let yourself glance over it. You know what I mean? If you don't hyper focus on. And I know that there's this huge cult following of this movie now that has torn it apart and really tries to like make every single situation work in sort of the context of how this movie is treating time travel. But like that scene when they're at the gas station and it's bizarre to me too that even though Aaron is the one that sort of really takes things off the rails, when he brings up the idea of punching his boss in the face, he lets it go pretty quickly when they're at that gas station, but Abe can't let it go. Like the idea just being in his mind is enough for them to both start fucking shit up. But it's frustrating. It was frustrating. I know that's kind of the point. It's frustrating how quickly they let it all get out of control. I mean, I understand that there's that emotional human element, and the point is that that's what makes this whole thing so unsustainable. But it's frustrating because of how intelligent they are and how easily it seems like so many of these issues could have been avoided, but they just let it get completely out of control.
Yeah, because that was one of the things I liked about the movie too, is how gritty that they presented time travel as being. They didn't show it as like an instantaneous process.
Yeah.
They have to go back and have this whole methodology with how they do it, and they have to be really careful. And they go back for a couple hours, and it's like, and then they sit in the box for like another 6 hours. Like it's like a grueling process.
Yeah.
And I liked how it was shown, because you know it's like tempting for like the sake of the movie to make it seem like such a quick and easy process, but I like that it was like like you have to like think about it like a serial killer would. Like you have to go back and like you have this whole process of things you have to do. You got to get the hotel room, you got to like get in, get out of the stuff you want to do, and then you got to go wait for 6 hours, and then you could potentially fuck up getting out of the thing and like, you know, like fuck yourself up if you get out too. Like it was just cool, like all the little details they threw in. I thought was a nice touch.
Yeah, agreed. Which is why it was so fucking frustrating that Aaron brings a cell phone, like the fucking cell phone. I'm like, dude, come on. Like I get that it's the cell phone thing is making a point that he's sort of losing touch with the consequences and is more concerned. But it's just like, come on, dude. Like, why in God's name would you even risk something like that with what you already know?
Yeah. Yeah, and it was like the middle of the movie was so strong to me, like when they actually got to the time travel stuff. Like I thought all that stuff was really cool. And the reasons for going back to want to do it are like, you know, pretty reasonable. Like what anybody would do is like just get money, you know, like they go play in the stock market, like they know it's going to happen, or get lottery numbers, or, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And like all that stuff was pretty, and I that's the thing with the clarity of the script. Like I didn't know where it started becoming like a problem. I mean, like the story about the guy with the shotgun at the party is like the big thing, like the big crux of the movie where things start changing, right? Like
so from what I gathered, there are two of those big crux things that really fuck shit up, right? There's the ex-boyfriend with the shotgun at the party, and then there's Granger, who is their potential investor that they've been trying to woo, right? Which is Abe's girlfriend's dad. You remember they kind of meet him at the pool party early on, and
vaguely.
So earlier in the movie, what's his face? It's Abe is the blonde guy, and Aaron is the brunette dude. So he's like, when they're at this cookout, he's like, you know, oh, don't call Mr. Granger, he's going to treat you like a child. You got to call him by his first name. He's like this investor that their little think tank is trying to get to invest, right? And he happens to be the dad of Abe's current girlfriend, whose name I think it's Rachel. So Rachel is a very important part of this, Abe's girlfriend, because her dad is the investor they're trying to mess with, and her ex-boyfriend is the guy who shows up with the shotgun at the party. So it's her two connections that start fucking things up, because the dad, and this is what's crazy. This is the craziest part of the movie to me, is that scene where they're in the car and all of a sudden Granger, who's the dad, is following them in a car. And like, this is where this is about an hour and a minute in where I really I wrote down, I'm completely fucking lost, because he follows them in the car. They get out and he's like chasing them through this neighborhood, through a backyard where it appears that they stumble upon their doubles who have been seriously injured or knocked unconscious by Granger, right? Is what it seems like. Yeah. And that's when Abe decides he needs to keep this double of himself alive, and they like, you know, put him into a hotel and they give him whatever that like combination of medicine is or whatever to like keep him alive but sedated. And man, that's where it just got so jumbled, but it seemed pretty clear that somehow or another their investor in another version of the timeline or another version of themselves found out what they were doing and was trying to put a stop to it. Maybe found out, maybe Rachel's dad or maybe Rachel's ex-boyfriend kills her at that party in one version of the timeline. So the dad starts investigating and trying to, you know, who fucking knows? But I love that.
Right.
I love that there's this thing that happens so fast that has such a huge part of throwing everything off the rails, and they give you absolutely no information about it. You're just kind of left to be like, what the fuck? You're just like along for the ride.
Yeah, you have to piece together. You actually have to come up with the story. You have to figure out what it is.
Yeah, which I don't know if I love or hate, really, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's exciting right now.
I kind of hate it, but it's fun to talk about. Yeah, and I don't hate the movie. I just hate that it requires so much of you as a viewer. You have to like have like a minor in engineering to understand what the fuck they're talking about with all the protein buildup talk in the beginning. It's like to understand all the protein stuff, and then you got to figure out how all this came to. Like, yeah, it's all pretty understandable until like the last 20 minutes when they start like closing in on themselves. Like there's that one scene where he like puts the oxygen mask over his sleeping self.
Right.
And by the time it hit that point, I had no fucking clue what was
exactly.
Like,
and I think that version of himself that he's putting the oxygen mask on is the incapacitated double that they found on the ground in that yard that I think had just been knocked out by Granger, by Rachel's dad. That's how I got that. But it was a struggle to get there.
Yeah, because they mentioned something, and this is the weird thing about the movie too, is like I can't remember if it was like at the beginning of the movie or at the end of the movie, but they talk about having somebody in the back bedroom, and I'm assuming it was a double. Like I really, everything is so messed up in my brain. I have no idea when
I think
certain things happen.
that guy that they're talking about keeping him incapacitated, I think that's Abe's double that they found on the ground, that they were like, okay, well, we have to do something with, like, we can't just leave him here. Like, because clearly their actions had caused, in whatever fucked up version of the timeline, had caused Granger to show up and attack him, and they were like, well, we got to fix this somehow. We can't leave him here, but we can't take him to like, we just need to like keep him in this room, keep him alive so that it doesn't fuck anything else up. I don't know. They don't explain nearly enough of it for it to make sense.
So yeah, because that was the thing at the end too, when they're having to go back, and I wrote down, it's like, were they trying to reconstruct things that happened in a particular way to like fix like timeline issues?
I think that's what they were doing. Well, and so shit gets really crazy, right? Where you realize that Aaron has, I don't want to say been, he's been kind of acting independently of Abe, right? Like he at some point goes back and gives an earlier version of himself audio recordings of all of these conversations, so that no matter what happens, because he feels out of control, no matter what happens, the earlier version of him will have this level of control. And it seems like even that's not enough. Like he kind of, when they're doing the basketball scene with the ex-boyfriend who shows up with the shotgun, things don't happen exactly the way they thought they would. And you know, he misses the shot, and then it changes everything. What he says afterwards. Yeah, and I think that's just conveying that, you know, and that's why he has that little mini voiceover monologue where he was like, "Man, if we'd just done it one more time, like it would have, like who knows how many times that actually happened? It could have happened 20 times or whatever, but you're always going to feel like one more time." But I think the point there was that any single thing can change that will just fuck it all up. And you know,
Yeah, he was like, there are too many permutations.
yeah,
It's too many possibilities that can change. Yeah.
yeah. I
Yeah.
I hated how careless they got, but I also understand it, and it also made for a better and more chaotic ending of the movie. And wait, so at the end, right? Like, Aaron decides he's done. Like, he just wants to take whatever money he's made, and just go on this perpetual vacation and do whatever. And Abe decides he wants to stay behind and try to, I guess, fix whatever they've changed or keep an eye on it. Just try to keep everything stable. And then we see...
Yeah,
Go ahead.
No, I got like I don't think this is intentionally that way, but I got the vibe he's like, he can like play God a little bit. And if there's not this other guy around to cause any issues, like he can kind of make the world like whatever. I mean, I don't know if there's anything like literally in the movie that would state that, but it always, it felt like he can contain this world and control it without Aaron present anymore. He can have
without
it.
Abe present, right? The two A names fucking kill
Abe,
me. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, that's one thing too with him, like being like, you can go and do whatever you want. I can't change you, but like don't ever come back under any circumstances. Which is just like and I was just thinking too, is like, why? I don't know why him going and then coming back would change anything other than, he just wants to, have control over this small thing.
Yeah, I think, because what it seems like happens is that Aaron goes to another country and seems...
Like France or something like that.
Yeah, or Ecuador or whatever, and he seems to be starting...
Yeah.
He says every square inch, whatever. I think the point there is he's building a bigger version of their machine so that he can...
Yeah, it's definitely like Insidious, or like he's got something planned.
Yeah, he's on some kind of mission to take over the world, and I think Abe in the airport is like, you're gonna do whatever you clearly, because I think that's the point, is that as soon as Aaron realized that he could tell earlier versions of himself what to do, like, all bets were off. And as soon as Abe,
I was gonna say,
realized, go ahead.
I'm sorry. No. Well, when you were explaining that, I had a moment. I was like, they're in the airport together, and he's like, I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna do this. It's like, why would he let him go? Like, he's like potentially about to destroy the space-time continuum. Like,
yeah, man.
You know what I mean? Like,
maybe things had just gotten so wicked that he was like, I don't want to change anything anymore, and I don't want to know what you're changing. Like, because one of the conversations that they have at the gas station is like, what's better, being paranoid all the time or knowing that you have a reason to be paranoid? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's like there's a certain, and like this could just be the way that I'm interpreting it. I don't know if this is like what was intended, but like there's a certain godlike complex that they have, like this like divine power. They can manipulate time and events, and they can like figure out how all that works. And like Abe, I think he's the blonde-haired one, right? Abe.
Yes.
He wants to keep it local and contained, and then Aaron wants to go out in the world and conquer everything. It's just like, I don't know if that's the interpretation. That's just the vibe I get the way it ends, because it ends kind of abruptly.
Yeah, no, and I think your interpretation is 100% correct. My issue with it is how quickly Aaron becomes that evil macro guy. Like, it. Yeah, there was really no ramp to it. Things get out of control, and he's like, "Sorry, I'm evil now, and I'm gonna move to another country and dominate the world." Like,
right. Yeah, there was no like, I think the only bits of his character is like he comes a little like unhinged sometimes, like when his like ear starts bleeding. Like,
okay, yeah, we gotta talk about the fucking ear bleeding, right? Like, okay, so he starts bleeding from his ear. They don't go to the hospital. They don't do anything to remedy it. He's literally bleeding from his brain after using a time machine, and they just
like profusely, like it's like filling up an entire town.
Yeah, and they just go back to their apartment, wipe it off, and like keep trading stocks. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I thought it was going to end with somebody getting like stage 4 like lymphoma or something like that. It was like very like realistic dark ending.
Consequences
of your actions. I did want to highlight. So I've talked about like the highly specific, like made for engineers, like kind of dialogue of the movie. Like there was a couple of lines in there that was like parabolic, and like they mentioned like Weeble, and then they're breaking down the science of everything, and they have like the AN, BN, like they're trying to explain the whole
Yeah, the
cycle of
parabolas.
everything. Yeah, the parabolas, and like it's like this is basic mechanics and heat 101. Like come on, like it's easy stuff. It's like, all right.
Yeah, it's like all that's important is that we think that it's easy for them. That's all that matters.
Yeah, no, and that's a good point too, because it's like you trust that they know what they're talking about, and it kind of like it grounds the movie in a weird way, where it's like, oh, these are just some guys in like their garage. Like it's almost like that image of Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak in like their garage, like making the Mac,
Yeah.
like that famous like software engineer image. Like it's like the legend and the myth of like engineers like and scientists like creating something like independently in their garage, and then it ends up changing the world, like kind of thing.
Yeah,
Like,
and
that was kind of
yeah, for 100%, and it needs to be mythical. Like I'm glad that I have no idea what the fuck they're talking about, and I'm glad that I'm sure there are engineers who would love to weigh in on it, but like I hope that it was all nonsensical, because that's not the fucking point.
Yeah, I mean, like for a movie that like could be like considered like a B, and it's pretty like B movie. I mean, like the standard plot things happen, I suppose, but I mean, like they just kind of they peter out. They don't really like go in a plot heavy direction. It's more about big ideas, consequences that come with that, and then they just kind of split off in the end. It's not really a story. It's just like, this is what could potentially happen if this was a thing.
Yeah.
Which is interesting for sure.
Yeah, and I have to give an honorable mention to what is my favorite quote in the movie. Are you ready?
Uh-huh.
My favorite line in the movie. Man, are you hungry? I haven't eaten since later this afternoon.
Yep.
The only
that stuck out to me too.
the only half-hearted attempt at comic relief. It was so cringy that it was great. It was like it's all stress the entire fucking movie, and that one line when they're in the height of shit just getting completely out of control. Man, are you fucking hungry? I haven't eaten since later this afternoon. I loved it. They had to do it.
Yeah, it was a nice little it was like a Back to the Future level joke.
Right.
I did like the guy with the beer that they take the samples to. He's like, what is this on the outside? It's protein buildup. What was that? Protein buildup. He's just saying it like just a guy that's been like stuck in a laboratory. I loved it.
Yeah, he was great. And I'm impressed that they did what they did with the budget that they had. Like the context of the making of the movie made it so much more enjoyable for me.
Yeah, I did read something online. I don't know if this is true, but that the $7,000 budget potentially could have just been a marketing ploy.
Really?
For the movie. Yeah, they could have had more of a budget. I don't know how much they would have had, but I gotta say, after reading that though, like when you were talking about the movie, and like the thing I remembered was the $7,000 budget. That's how I knew what the name of the movie was. So
it did its job.
I mean, I think it worked. But there's also something funny. I love the fact that they're working out of this guy's garage, and they all come to work in like ties and like button down shirts. Like they're not like in jeans and like like t-shirts
Right.
or anything like that.
Right.
Which I just thought was like such a strange it's almost like Pulp Fiction, like where they're dressed in suits to go like kill a guy.
Yeah.
It's like,
hey,
it's a touch that doesn't really make any sense. But
you never know when an angel investor might show up, man. We're talking height of the tech boom, the .com boom, right? Like they gotta be ready.
Yeah, and this is 2004, which is really interesting to me because I was like, there was, I mean, like, there were a couple lines in there that I that were funny because he's like, so when he brings his cell phone into the machine, he's like, dude, you still have your cell phone? He's like, yeah, it's my wife, and he's like, should I answer it? And he's like, I don't give a fuck. And he like doesn't even care. He's like, I guess you can answer it.
It's so dumb. It made me so
They just give
angry.
up.
Yeah.
But he's on the phone with his wife, and he's like, hey, honey. Like, oh, I'm just going to go meet with those IT for lunch or something. It was like a very...
I wrote that down too. It's like that. I got to go with these offsite. It's just classic 2004 tech, bro. Like it really put it in a place and time.
Yeah, just like, yeah, it's like standard, like, you know, like such like a passing line, but it's like, it's so funny. Like we went back and watched Splice and that was like the same thing with that. Like just random little off-putting lines. It's like, wow, that really dates the movie a bit.
Yeah, truly dates it.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I don't know. I don't know if it was enjoyable. I can't. You know, I can appreciate the technical elements, not the sound design and not the acting.
No, not at all.
By far the weakest elements, and the script was, I think, good. I mean, like, I think, you know what they needed. They needed like, so they had the two guys explaining all the technical stuff, and then they needed like a dumb like kid brother. He's like, what are you guys talking about?
Yes.
And then they dumb it down even further.
Yes. They needed one of us in the scene is what they needed.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's like, and I applaud them because there's like no, like, there's no way they thought, it's like, you know, we're just making this for ourselves. There's no way that they thought this is for anybody else.
Yeah.
It's so specific and so like I've seen so many time travel movies and they all suck. Let's do it like our way. And the time travel stuff was the most enjoyable part, I think.
It really was. I'm scrolling through here looking at some of this trivia. So I love this. So this is what I was so hyper focused on, and this actually makes me angry. So there's some trivia here. One of the pivotal moments in the film is when a character named Granger suddenly appears, having traveled back in time, following them in their car. Why Granger went back in time and was following Abe and Aaron is never explained in the movie, and Carruth has admitted that he himself is not entirely sure.
He's like, something needed to happen in the movie, and this was the thing.
That makes me mad. Like, I actually was digging it, because I was like, like, I love that they're leaving it up to me to decide why this potential investor has, for some reason, hunted them down and beaten the shit out of one of them. Like, but, and you know what? Maybe it still was the point, but the fact that even Carruth, like, is like, I don't know. I don't care. Like, that's just annoying.
That's so lazy. I mean, like, because, see, that's the thing, too. The vibe I get from this movie, too, is, like, they had a bunch of big ideas, and they broke it down technically. Like, they, like, had, like, a whole... They must have had, like, whoever... I mean, I'm assuming it's the guy, but I'm sure he had buddies that he was, like, talking with the movie about, because there's no way I can't imagine somebody sitting in the room just, like, thinking out all the ins and outs of, you know, what's happening in the movie. So he must have been talking to his engineering buddies and explaining the movie, and then they're going through all the technical stuff. It's like, oh, this could happen, this could happen, this could happen. And in the middle, they forgot to write a story about like an engaging plot with characters. And then at the end, they kind of just tacked on. It's like, well, they go one way, the other guy goes the other way. That's the end of the movie.
Yeah, there was nothing to latch on to.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, there's definitely things you appreciate. But
yeah. And maybe that was the point, right? Like they don't have anything to latch onto. Their reality has become completely ungrounded, and that's how the viewer is supposed to feel. But it's also an excuse to not have a story.
Yeah, it's more like a slice of life. It's just like what these two guys would do if they had, time travel capabilities, which is, kind of just what anybody would do, I think.
Yeah.
If they were like smart enough to think about the like how to do it and come up with like a methodology to it.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So, and we're probably getting to the point here where we should wrap up. So are there any final points you want to make about this movie? Any final thoughts?
Has
it all been said?
I don't think so. I think I've just, I think the thing I appreciate the most about it is the editing and the pacing was really good. Like, and I think it was surprising how effective it was in certain parts, because it distracted me from how low budget and, amateurish some of it was. And it really, like, the shot choices were really good too. Like some of the angles that they picked and what they chose to cut between, like it made the movie feel more professional than it was. So I was like, that's a good like low budget like thing to take away from it.
Yeah. And the irony now that with like our obsession with making things feel like they're from a different time, like the obsession with film emulation and all this shit, right? The fact that it was actually shot on 16mm film with this really heavy film grain and all this heavy light.
I was gonna say, I was like, I bet you fucking love the film.
I ate that shit up, man. I ate that shit up, especially because I knew that it was actually on shitty film and not being emulated by a supercomputer at Netflix. Like it,
Yeah,
it made me very happy.
It did add an element because there were certain shots that I don't know if it was the way they were lit or if it was just how cheap the film stock was, but I was like, you could tell how cheap the movie was and how like shitty it was. But there was just something about either the film or like the way it's framed in the context of the movie. I don't know. It just didn't seem as bad as it should.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it only jumped out to me in a couple of scenes. Like there were a couple of night scenes where they're in their car where the grain is so heavily trying to compensate for the low light that it's just like it brought me out of it. And I'm with you too. It sort of like adds to the vibe of the movie in some way, but it was enough to pull me out of it and be like, oh my God, that looks terrible.
Yeah. It's really like, I mean, it definitely feels like it was shot for $7,000, but there are certain scenes where it's like filmed on somebody's like 2010 iPod Touch or something like that. Yeah. All
right. Well, I guess we should probably give this thing a rating. Sumner, how many beers do you need to enjoy this movie?
Oh.
On a scale of 1 to 5.
I started to enjoy it about 4. I started to enjoy myself more.
4?
Yeah, I think if I had pre-gamed a little bit, I think I would have enjoyed it more. Because I think even going back and rewatching it, and maybe there's, but I mean, what you were saying about David Caruth or
Caruth, I think, or Carruth, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like he didn't even know what was going on, like plot wise. So I'm not sure there's really a reason to go back and watch it.
No,
because I think unless you're an engineer or you have some kind of basis in like scientific reasoning and jargon, like I think it'll mean something more to engineering minded people.
Yeah.
But to like random, dumb guys like us, I don't know if it holds much.
I'm with you. I'm going to give it
beyond initial viewing.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm going to give it 4.2. I think that you need 4 to enjoy it, but you also need to stay at least cognizant enough to try to pay attention, so you can't get completely shit-faced. So I'm gonna give it 4.2.
Yeah. I guess if you lose all your senses, it's not. You're just like, I just might as well turn this off.
Well, I fucking love you, buddy. Thanks for doing another episode with me. I love being the guy who's seen it.
Yeah, that was fun. Yeah, yeah, that was something.
You don't have to say it was fun, but it was something.
It was fun. It was more fun to talk about it than it was to watch it.
Agreed. Which is why I love doing this podcast. We'll be back next week with a movie that Sumner has seen that I have not seen. All right. Thank you guys for listening. Be cool out there, and remember, you got this.
Well, every movie is better with at least one. Better with at least 4 beers if you're watching Primer.
All movies are better with at least 4 beers.
One guy's seen it, the other guy hasn't. First guy's gonna tell the second guy all about it, while they both get drunk.